really happy to have Karuna here. So Karuna and I we haven't known each other that long, maybe off and on, like maybe 10 years, or I don't know what it is, but here and there, our paths cross, at retreats and various places. But Karuna is one of the most senior-most students of Lama Zopa in our tradition, the FPMT tradition. And I believe he met the Lamas in the mid 70s, early to mid 70s. And, he worked with the Lamas and worked in the monastery in Kathmandu for maybe more than 10 or 15 years and helped the Lamas there. So, and then he, and also I think you started the Kathmandu Center, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, and he also, he's a psychotherapist. So he has he is a practicing psychotherapist, and he uses, which is really cool. He uses the Buddhist, the Buddhist, not tenets, but the Buddhist fundamentals, if you will, in his work. So so he's done a lot of work with organizations, with people, with couples, with families, et cetera, and with individuals. And I think that was, and finally, he's been I think you're still on the board of the FPMT, right?
I got thrown off and then thrown back on.
Okay. Since I don't know, late 80s. So he's been one of the people guiding the FPMT for a long, long, long time.
That's why it's in such a mess, are my decisions.
In any case, so I'm really happy to welcome Karuna. He's very learned and very skilled, and so it's wonderful to have him here. Thank you, Karuna.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everyone for being here. And wow, that was a good intro. A lot of what I do everything that I do is actually informed from my root teacher, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So as Shanka mentioned, I was in Nepal from 1975 until 1988. And Lama Yeshe passed away in 1984. So a lot of, when I teach, I do a lot of different stuff. And I always I like stories, and I like interaction too. So I didn't notice till today, Shanka, that we have it's a 2-hour class. Usually I'm thinking hour and a half. I mean, people get saturated.
You're the teacher, right? So you can do it any way you like.
I like to do it with what the students like. And then if it's 2 hours, then we'll do maybe a half-hour talking, an hour and a half meditation. I'm joking. So I do like interaction. So you guys will be able to unmute if you feel so inclined. And this module, I've taught many of what I do is, why don't you lead some prayers? Because everyone here is, I'm assuming, everybody here, Shanka?
Pretty much, except for Manuel. But Manuel is joining from Colombia. And so I'm sure that he's attended other classes, but I haven't, come across him during the same classes. So.
Well, the reason I ask is, depending on the sophistication of the audience, whether we do prayers, not prayers, what kind of prayers. But it sounds like this is a fairly familiar audience with Buddhism, so no one's going to be turned off if we have some opening prayers. Is that right? We are a Buddhist center, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But I'm very eclectic, because it really depends. I do so many different kinds of stuff, which I enjoy. Before I give Shanka the floor to do the prayers, is that, as he mentioned, I am a psychotherapist, but first I'm a Buddhist psychologist. First I'm a Buddhist. And my mission given to me or expressed to me by Lama Yeshe is someone said, you need to explain these ideas so your mother can understand them. So, without losing the ideas, without cheapening them, without watering them down. Lama Yeshe used to tell me or tell everyone that Buddhism are universal principles. So it's universal. So some of it, we're Tibetan Buddhists, so there's Tibetan culture. And Tibetan culture is something that when His Holiness was asked if he felt that Buddhism was transferable to the West, he said, I don't think Tibetan Buddhism is, but Buddhism is. In other words, leave the Tibetan with us. And now, personally, there are some certain unique features in Tibetan Buddhism that you don't find sometimes in other Buddhism, but that's kind of down the road a ways. So, so that's my own personal feeling, is that the mission is to help people understand these universal principles and improve their lives, of course. So that's why sometimes we do prayers, sometimes we don't do prayers. It just depends on the audience. So, and that being said, Shanka, why don't you get us situated?
Paula, you want to put the prayers up?
If you have them, Shanka, please
Okay.
go ahead. Yeah.
Well, hang on, I gotta, sorry, Karuna, just a second.
No, I don't. It's fine. I'll drink my tea. Anybody else have tea?
Have you made me the co-host already, Paula, so I can share the screen? Oops. Shoot. Hang on. Materials online link. Where did prayers go? Okay, L3 and L4 prayers, PDF. Okay. So Paula, I assume you've made me the screen share then? Okay. Share screen. There it is. Okay. So so we'll do the, wait, what happened to my, why wouldn't it go down?
Click on the screen and then try and scroll down.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to do it in English or Tibetan?
What do people enjoy? Maybe English.
Okay, I'll do it in English. Since the mandala offering will be in Tibetan, so yeah.
Okay.
I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Saji Bhakti Yuksing Me Tok Tram Rira Blingji Ni De Gan Padi Sangye Jindo Mikte Uwargiroku Namada Jingla Chobarsho. O holy and perfect pure Lama from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamiriya Tayami. It's up to you now.
Oh, good. Thanks. I got the stage.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, let me start here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So just to set the mind in the right space, right frame that Shanka was helping us slip into, because we're a Buddhist center, then it's easier to describe what the right motivation is, at least the very least. We spend this time together, this hour and a half to 2 hours together, next several weeks perhaps, and thinking that since every instant is spent generating imprints upon our consciousness, and these imprints are the actual meaning of karma, cause and effect, these imprints will ripen in the future. Just like putting money in the bank, we can just put it in and leave it up to the whims of the economy as to whether it's going to go up and down, or you can dedicate it just like we motivate or invest it for a college fund or car or house, whatever. So in the same way, we can do the same thing this time we're spending together. That if you motivate, you're actually receiving, not from me, but you're actually receiving, you're here receiving teachings from your guru, your Buddha, Buddha for you. Then you create an incredible amount of merit. It's not for me, I'm not saying this base is Buddha. I'm not saying that. So because of that, then we get incredible, huge benefits. So you can dedicate or motivate that I'm going to use this time together, that I'll become a better person. I'll become a wiser person. And I'm going to use this time, this energy, this experience, even if it's confusion, for the benefit of enlightening my own, develop my own awakening mind, and that awakening mind for the benefit so that I can help others develop theirs. Something like that. Okay. So I'd like to, since we're a small group, I wonder if we can, is it too weird if you just tell me a little bit like who you are? About me? Just kind of like what your relationship is with either Santa Fe Center or with Buddhism, like that. If you don't want to say anything, you don't have to say anything either, but it kind of helps to connect. I like to make a connection with you, and we'll make a connection anyway. So I'm going to pick on Paula to start since she says host. So you can unmute, right? Yeah, okay, good.
So everyone, if you wish to speak to Karuna, then obviously you'll need to unmute yourselves to do it. And just to let you know, Karuna, I was doing the IT for PNL.
Oh, you were?
Yeah. So if you want to temporarily unmute yourselves, anybody, you can hold your finger on the space bar and keep it there while you chat. It's just a very quick way of doing it. Okay, so I'm in Japan.
Oh, you are? Oh.
I've lived here for about 12 years, and Japanese Buddhism is extremely complex and varied, and very interesting. I spend a lot of time in Buddhist temples here, and also in Shinto temples. If this is too much information, Karuna, just stop me.
No, I might have you go on and on and on. I'm getting more interested.
And people have some funny ideas outside of Japan, what the Japanese do or don't practice. People think that Japanese just do Zen. That's absolutely not true. As I say, it is so complex. We have hundreds of sects.
Oh, yeah.
And we have the traditional sects, and we have the post-war kind of slightly strange sects, a little bit more like cults.
Uh-huh.
So all that's going on. And there's also synthesis with syncretism with Shinto and the mountain traditions. And I happen to live in a Buddhist mountain. It's owned by the Buddhists.
And you're ordained?
No, I'm not.
You're not? Oh, you look ordained.
That's very kind. So I think that's maybe enough from me.
And you speak Japanese?
No, I'm afraid not. I wish.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. I like it when people are from all over the place. So who else is, anyone else? Barbara? Barbara?
Yeah, I can go next. I'm Barbara.
Yeah.
I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh.
And I met Buddhism formally when I did the November course at Kopan in November of 2019.
Oh, great.
And Venerable Rabina was the teacher, and wow.
Yeah.
Need I say more? So I joined Thubten Norbuling in November, and I'm just really grateful to that center because that's keeping me connected to Buddhism.
Oh, fantastic.
So, and I'm looking forward to the class that you're teaching. So thank you.
Okay, we're going to talk. I have a bad habit of telling stories, and so a lot of them will be about Kopan or those back in that place. So you have to stop me if I get too rambly.
I was going to say, I'm going to love those stories because it will take me back.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else courageous enough?
I'll go. In 2018, I was in Vietnam and I entered my very first Buddhist temple. I had kind of a reaction, and so I kept going back to temples trying to figure out what was going on. And finally, I decided, I Googled where can I learn about Buddhism near me, and 5 days later, I was in Tushita in
Dharamsala?
Dharmkot, yeah, and the rest is history. I found the TNLSF by following Venerable Robina. I went to her death and dying course in Tushita. So
it's amazing, huh? She has
yes,
quite an impact.
She sure does.
Yeah. Did you make it to Nepal?
Yes, but I have not taken the November course.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. If anyone else is courageous enough, it's hard, isn't it? When some people are very uncomfortable with, like, I was the one in the class. I never spoke in classes, so I understand. Okay. So should I wait a minute? See if I don't want to push people. So part of the reason I want to, like I said, just to make a connection on traditionally with Buddhist teachings, it is typically, as you know, some of you know, they've been in traditional teachings. It's 2 hours or more of kind of a lecture, and then delivery of content, and often not a lot of questions and answers, not a lot of interaction, right? I mean, that's traditionally. I think it's some of the lamas now and some of the teachers are have a little bit more interaction, a little more question answer, but that's not traditional for them. One time, one of my jobs in Kopan back in the days, was I was helping to train the geshis. So like Geshe Sherab is one of my, excuse me for that if it sounds arrogant, but he was one of my students. Geshe Sherab was, like 9 years old. And so Lama Yeshe had asked me to establish, we were the first monastery to establish an English language program for the monks. This is 1977, 78. And we were criticized a lot for doing that because other monasteries could not understand why you would want your monks to learn English unless you wanted them to do business. So we were, it was gossiped about that we were training monks to go do trading with Hong Kong and bring stuff back so they would know English, how to, in those days it was like the big deal was going to Hong Kong and bringing back boom boxes and smuggling gold and remember calculators? Remember those calculators came out back then, the little handheld calculator. So we were doing, so I was involved in doing that. And I remember, so in those days, the geshis were just starting to come to the West. We had just very few centers. And so they would come to Kopan first to get a little exposure to Western culture just through myself and Westerners who were coming for the courses and stuff like that. So they would practice teaching to the Westerners. And it was very rough, because our translators were also very rough. They were my students as well, and it was very tough, very, very, very tough. And so, this one geshe was teaching once, and and he gave me a class, and the students, the Western students, were coming to me and go, "God, can you do something about this geshe? He's so boring. He's just going by the list. He's just reading the list." That's very typical. They read the lists and the text, and then maybe give a few extra words about it, and the people were just going crazy because they had the text, and that's not how we learn, right? We don't learn that way. We have a much different way of. I think we're quite trained in learning. Actually, our school system does well. I mean, there's a debate about that, but point is that in Tibet traditional learning, the Tibetan system was a lot of memorization for many, many years. They memorized, and so it was all rote. In fact, when I taught English, I trained here in the States, and I was quite creative, you know, different ways of teaching English as a second language or foreign language. And a lot of my students would just take the books and try to memorize them because that's what they were good at. They could memorize thousands and thousands of pages. So this one geshe, and I know I sat in on his classes and he was really boring. And so, you know, during one meeting or lunch we used to have together with all, you know, probably 7, 8, 9 geshes, and we're talking. So I said to this geshe, I said, you know, I think the people would appreciate if you spoke more like from your experience, you know, but I was very polite because I knew, you know, it was very sensitive. I was a lay person for one thing. I was a Westerner, you know, so on the hierarchy, I was pretty down low, although I had a official capacity there. And so I was saying something like this very respectfully that maybe he could speak from his experience and maybe could elaborate more on the points. He sat there and listened like this. And when I finished, he said, then you teach. So that didn't go over very well. And interestingly enough, that geshe did go to one of our European centers, and he didn't last. Actually, he was not. They didn't resonate with him at all. So anyway, so you teach. That was the message. Yeah, one of our translators, our star translator, another Thubten Yeshe, not the one that we know from Santa Fe. He was our star, and it was like pulling teeth, you know, to try and understand him as he's translating. Is just this odd English that he would sometimes use, and I would go, and he was very strong-willed. This Thubten Yeshe. He lives in France, by the way. He's still around. And so I would have these arguments where I said, well, why did you use this? We don't use that word that way. And he'd tell me, yes, you do. It's the correct word. And it's some obscure word that you and I would never even use. And so I remember one day I said, come on, Thubten Yeshe, we don't use that word. He says, yes, I used it correctly. And I said, well, I don't think so. So he disappeared for about 10 minutes, came back, and he had Webster's dictionary. And I think the word started with an L. And he looked up the word, and it was like, you know how they have 7, 9, 10 different definitions, right? They go down, and it was like the 7th definition of that word. And I said, how did you find this word? And he said, I'm memorizing the dictionary. Their powers of memorization. That's how they're going about learning. So we're going to do something. We're trying, you know, we're not like that, right? We're different in this culture. So my point is that I think that we're more inquisitive. I think have developed our intellect to quite a degree and through our education system, or at least to some degree. And so that's why I like a little more interaction. I like question answers and things like that. Additionally, I'm curious where people are at in terms of like what level of introduction do I need to teach this topic, how to meditate. How to meditate is one of our Discovering Buddhism modules. I think it's a 3rd one or 2nd one. And is anybody here going through the whole Discovering Buddhism program for the certificate? It'd be good for me to know. Anybody? And people who, okay, if you do, and I can't see your face. Yeah. No, Kim. Okay. If anyone is, because that's very different. I'd rather not. Well, wasn't constrained by that, because then it includes like certain exams. I have to cover this material now, which I tend to cover, but I have to be respectful to people who might be going through that program because they're trying to get the certificate and they need the details. Is anybody in this group totally new to meditation? It might be. How? It's kind of a hard question because I don't like calling people out like, oh yeah, I'm new, you know, kind of thing. But well, maybe we can just go along as if everyone's new, including myself. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, good. Usually I do have, often I do use slides. I decided not to tonight, just out of deference to feeling out how people are, where they are. We might use slides next week. We don't know. Sometimes slides get in the way of the connection. And so I'm going to start at the beginning, what I think of as the beginning with meditation. And if it's too basic for some of you, I apologize, but I think I have to do that in deference to everybody. Any questions at this point? Comments? Nothing? Okay. 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 I hope, Manuel, is your connection good down there? Are you able to hear okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Yes.
Great. Okay. I would ask who was in Milwaukee, was it? Was it in Milwaukee? Barbara, you're in Milwaukee, is that what you said? Oh, Kim is. Yeah, how's the connection? Maybe, yeah. Okay, so just in terms of this class, I'm just looking at my notes if you don't mind. So meditation, it's become very popular. We all know it. The word is common. It's become mainstream in some ways. And myself, having grown up spiritually or Buddhistically in a very traditional environment, so I am traditional, but when I say that, it's with a certain sense of satisfaction, because it's not that I want to express these ideas in traditional language. I don't. But it is a little alarming for me as to what's going on in the marketplace these days and what's going on. There's so much going on, isn't there? There's so much, from mindfulness to relaxation to EMDR, emotional-based stress reduction. All these things are good. But what and then yoga, and there's meditation traditions in the Hindu tradition and the Christian tradition and the Sufi tradition. And I mean, you really think about it, it's not surprising, but it's all over the place. And what I find with students these days is, because we have such great exposure to everything, right? I mean, everything, that there's a lot of confusion as to what meditation really is. Okay, so let's talk about that. When we talk, so it's not that any other tradition is wrong or right, it's just that what we're talking about here is Buddhist meditation. And I don't think there's a big difference at this level defining Buddhist meditation, whether to define it from the Theravada tradition or the Mahayana tradition or the Tantric tradition. I don't think that matters, that's not where we're at. I think any Buddhist tradition, whether it's in Japan or in Nepal or in India or Sri Lanka, are going to have these basic tenets, these similarities. Okay. Later, when we talk about techniques, then we have some diversion, only from the point of view of what a person's trying to work on. Okay. But the Buddhist intention, I think, in all the Buddhist schools is the same with meditation. Okay. That's my experience. I haven't been to every Buddhist school or studied everyone, but I have confidence that that's true. And actually, Paula, if you notice something in Japan that might be different, that's authentic, then please pipe in, okay? Or anybody else, for that matter. Okay, so let's talk about what I have a, how's this? I don't want to use the word rigid, but sort of a committed way of talking about Buddhism, not Buddhism, meditation. So let's talk about what we feel it is first from the Buddhist tradition, okay? And then we can talk about other looks if we need to. So to be very clear, meditation in the Buddhist tradition, the Tibetan word for meditation is gom. And the Sanskrit word, I think it's dhyana. Well, there's a few words, dhyani, but the point there's an exact translation of the Sanskrit word in this case. So gom, and for those about Buddhist things, there's gompa, right? The temple where people study and do rituals and that sort of thing. So it's the same gom. Okay, it's the same. I believe it's the same gom. So gom means, and this is so helpful. Gom means to become familiar. So now you have to keep that understanding, that word in your head. You can never sway in the other direction. You know, once you hear something, you can't unhear that word, okay? That's our word. So what does it mean? So you think about all the different, well, familiar with what? Yeah, let me finish my definition. So it means to become, in particular, well, traditionally, it means to becoming familiar with what's virtuous or wholesome, and familiar with what's not wholesome or non-virtuous. Now, again, as we dig down, we'll know that what we're talking about is what's wholesome in the mind, okay? It's not a question of becoming familiar with what's wholesome in terms of livelihood, for example. That's not the way it's meant to become familiar. So familiar with how I like to think of it as familiar with how the mind functions, and familiar with the nature of reality. Now, that's huge just in and of itself, because part of the mind functioning is the neuroses, right? Referred to as afflictions in Buddhist language, afflictions, delusions, disturbing emotions, those things we'll talk more about. And familiar with the positive emotions, love and compassion, equanimity, altruism, non-violence, non-hatred, things like that. So it's becoming familiar. So as normal modern people, I don't have to say Westerners, because now it's just more modern people, everything, is we're not really familiar with the mind. This is not an area of study that, unfortunately, our children in their schools, maybe a little bit now, but they're not being educated, and we weren't educated. We had to go study Buddhism, right? And it's like the first thing, or whatever, maybe another spiritual tradition, but it's like all this time from the moment we're born until now, all of our different ages, we've had a mind. And if I ask you, if I ask you, what is a hand, for example? What is a hand? Anyone want to say what's a hand? Are you familiar with your hand? You're familiar with your hand, right? Don't be shy. So it's not a trick question. I do have trick questions as well. So you're familiar with your hand. Tell me one thing about a hand. Barbara, what's one thing about a hand?
It has 5 fingers.
Okay. And Kim, tell me another factor of the hand. Unmute. You can hold your space bar down. Yeah.
Okay, it's one of 4 appendages.
Okay.
For the body.
Yeah. Paola, can you tell me something else about the hand? What's its texture?
Texture, wrinkly in
Wrinkly
my case.
texture. Okay. And Manuel, do you have an idea? Anything to add?
Okay, so it's a part of the body, maybe.
Okay. What color is it? It has a color, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else want to add? I mean, it's got a texture of kind of soft and squishy kind of thing, and then it's hard. What's it made up of? What's it constructed of?
Well, muscles, bones, ligaments, capillaries.
Okay.
Skin.
Good. You get really, really good. So you're familiar. Everyone's familiar with their hand, correct? We could say this: familiar with your foot, your body, correct? But now, so here's the rub. What is the mind made up of? Are you familiar with the mind? You've had your mind at least as long as you've had your hand. Okay. Isn't it weird? I mean, generally speaking, people don't know. So, and I'm a you know, I had a really hard time when I I have a master's in clinical psychology that I got after I came back from Nepal. So I was in Nepal, you know, like most of 14 years and studied Buddhist psychology and all this sort of stuff. And then then Lama Thubten Yeshe advised me. Lama Yeshe had already passed away 4 years before. And he said, why don't you go get your degree in psychology, you know, and work. At that time, he said, work with troubled youth. And I think he meant work with myself. I think he meant. Or maybe later. Yeah, my kids were never, I have 3 kids. They were never troubled. So I don't think he meant my kids. I mean, they were normal. I mean, they were trouble in their own way. So if you think about this thing, when I was in psychology school, this is a different class that I teach, but just a little snapshot is that if you think about psychologists or psychotherapists, right? Psychologist means a student or studier of the psyche, and the psyche being the mind, right? Mind, spirit, soul. And if you ask people, have you ever asked psychologists what's the definition of mind? Has anyone ever asked psychologists that? Yeah, you won't get a definite. You'll get something, but it's always different for every. You know, it's just like vague, and so if I ask you, for example, we know that the hand, Barbara. Kim, you might want to mute your. Go back to mute on yours. Yeah, thanks. If you go to the hand, we said it's white or tan or pink or whatever, right? Color, dark, light, okay? Or, you know, hard, soft, muscles, tendons. So my question to you is, what color is the mind? Okay, so the hand has a shape, right? Leg, knee, nose, shape. So what shape is the mind? You've had it since you were born, and everyone else around you has it. So if you, I mean, someone has to, if you don't know, then someone probably, it's weird, isn't it? You know, I think, so as a psychotherapist, I think it's appalling. That's my word. I think it's appalling that psychotherapists and psychologists don't know what it is. There's a psychologist, maybe some of you heard of him, Dan Siegel. Have people heard of Dan Siegel? There's a lot of neuroscience. So I did meet him once or twice, and we had this conversation. He said that he roughly has asked 100,000 people, because he asked in his big workshops, you know, how many, and most of the attendees are psychologists or therapists or mental health workers, not all, but, or education. He's asked them how many of them had received a definition of the mind ever in their education. And he said about 5% out of 100,000 raised their hands. And then he asked them, okay, where did you receive that? And all of them had been through some sort of Buddhist class. So psychology's young still. They don't have, now if I go see, if Paula looks around, goes and talks to some of her Buddhist scholar friends, they will have the same definition of mind that my Tibetan teachers have, and that the Sri Lankan scholars will have, and the Vietnamese scholars will have, or, you know, those who know the definitions, will have the same definition. Okay, so our job in meditation is to become familiar with what makes us happy and what makes us not happy. It's so simple. Okay, and we can't do that if we don't know that what makes us happy and what makes us not happy is rooted in the mind. So that's the first digression from a materialist point of view. So in our world today, the confusion about what makes us happy, I don't think people in this class, but generally, is based upon developing a level of material satisfaction, right? Right. And it's, people say, oh yeah, even the Beatles sang about money can't buy you love. But we're not talking about on an intellectual level, we're talking about on a instinctive level. Okay. Okay. So this is about becoming familiar. Again, we're going back to meditation. So Buddhist meditation is about becoming familiar with reality. Okay, the reality of how happiness and unhappiness arises. And then that the immediate default to that is that happiness and unhappiness arise from the mind. We're all on board with that, right? Okay. Okay. We're all on board with that, sure. But how does it? Okay. How does it? So so it doesn't do any good for us to meditate. I mean, we can just meditate. We can meditate on something, and it has some temporary results. But that Buddhism is kind of a bit in your face, and is not really happy with just that getting calm and relaxed. So I'm sorry, because that's the traditional me talking. There are a lot of Buddhists, or there's a lot of programs out there now that are Buddhists or Buddhist claim, and they're not focusing on this part of meditation. You know what I mean? They're focusing on relaxation, mindfulness. Nothing wrong with relaxing. Better to be relaxed than not relaxed. Nothing wrong with mindfulness. Better to be mindful than not mindful. But I don't think it's fair to, I don't think it's authentic to express these approaches as Buddhist. We have to check whether it's Buddhist or not. What does it mean to be Buddhist, for one thing? What does that mean? What defines something? What makes it something? Like, let's say we both go to a meditation class, and one's Buddhist and one's not Buddhist. What is the distinguishing characteristic about that? I mean, these are hard questions, but anyone want to venture? Okay, Barbara, and then Kim.
Well, in Buddhism, it's really getting to know your mind, understanding your mind, changing your mind, looking at things differently. Just really, that to me is what meditation in the Buddhist form is.
Okay, I agree. I think that's a defining characteristic. Yeah, Kim?
Oh, I was going to kind of echo the same thoughts, but again, in Buddhism, because there is no creator and there is no punisher and rewarder, that we are responsible for our own thoughts, our own actions. So the onus does fall on us to get to know our own mind. Right.
So that leap, though, is interesting, isn't it? Because not everyone has made that, or not everyone, I want to say not everyone, very few people make that leap, have made that connection. So when we think that the goal of life, if we just simplify it, every living thing has the same goal: to avoid pain and suffering and to be happy. It's just, I mean, it's sometimes helpful to break it down to really a very simple formula. When even a spider that's in your sink, that can't get out, and you try and help it out, it seems to be very scared, and it's looking to protect its life, isn't it? Even though you're trying to get in there with a cup or something, and it's scary and it's running all over the place. So it's not so complex, for its reality. It has the same goal as us, in that it feels afraid of being hurt, of suffering. Same, it's just that the content changes, but the motivation's the same. So that level of freedom is only through the mind, is only through the mind and not through the body. Okay, so in order, because we commit to that idea that the solution's in the mind itself, which it is, I believe. The beautiful thing about the mind is that it's also the source of our salvation, our liberation. So as screwed up as we are, and some people are have more problems than others, of course, it's that exact same mind that you, so, you know, there's no other mind that you're going to have to work with other than your own. That's kind of amazing. That's so amazing, because you can look at other people and maybe you feel, wow, that person's really messed up, has a lot of problems, a lot of troubles. You never have to be in that person's mind. You know, so there's kind of a rejoicing in that. I know a lot of people have particular problems. I'm not saying that, you know, some of us don't have severe problems. I understand that. But you don't have to go out, you don't have to go anywhere else. You just have to do it in your world. And the way you do it in your world is not that much different than the way I have to do it in my world and each person's world. Now, because we all have the same basic makeup. Okay? It's like a house has the same basic materials, but a lot of different designs. Okay? So let's get clear what the mind is, because I think that's important. So, as I mentioned, if you go any Buddhist country, or any Buddhist scholar, or someone, you know, someone who studies, I guess, a little bit, they will have the same definition of mind. Okay? And the definition of mind is that it's, the actual definition is that it's clear and cognizing. It's clear and experiences. I like experiences. The actual definition is clear and cognizing. Sometimes when I think experiences, so when you, like, I scratch my head, right? Or I look out at I'm in a really nice area, you know, I look out at the trees out there. Or we're talking here, or I'm doing the talking, but we're talking here. You're experiencing something, aren't you? That experiencer is your mind. So when we look at each other now, is the experiencer your eyes? Is that who experiences what you're seeing? No. Okay, because if it was your eyes, and excuse me for the graphic description, and you took your eyeball out and you put it over there, you'd still see, right? So it's not the eye that experiences the colors and the faces, is it? So it's the experiencer is is mind. And that's different than your hand. I mean, we mix up things. We say, oh, my hand, you know, I hurt my finger, right? I burnt my finger, as if the mind was the finger, right? But clearly it's not, because there's a subject that sees that's feeling the burnt hand, right? You know, if you think about it, this is becoming familiar. When we meditate, we get more and more into this reality that there's a kind of a weird separation between the experiencer, which is the mind, and the hand. Because if they were not separate in some way, you couldn't perceive it, could you? Right? It has to be some subject object happening there. But what do we say? We say, oh, I burnt myself, right? I burnt myself. So that's a misconception. We're not going to go there today. But just to start exploring, wow, that's amazing. The mind didn't get burnt at all, but it thinks it did, you know, right? If someone says to you, you know, let's see, let me think of something, an insult. You know, you're at the supermarket and someone says, hey, you cut in front of me. And you say, I didn't cut in front of you. Yeah, you did. I was waiting over here, right? And the guy person says, God, I want so pushy. You're so pushy. And we get like offended, right? It's so funny because the mind feels like it was offended, but there's something happened with some sound, excuse me, something happened with some sound waves, right? It was just sound waves, which is made up of molecules and stuff and atoms, right? Am I right? I think that's true. But we say, oh, I feel offended. That guy is so insulting. So that's the way we go through life, and that's part of the problem. We're not going to go there at the moment, but just to give a little intro about that. So things are functioning in the mind that we're not really very clear about. So this quality of the experiencer gets insulted in the checkout line, or being accused of taking something that you didn't take, or saying something you didn't say, or doing something you didn't do. That's the mind. And that mind that's experiencing is clear, like space. And it's cognizing. So the mind is different than space because space does not cognize. It doesn't know anything. There's no experiencer. Okay? So when there's an experiencer, that is what we say, that thing has mind. So probably a piece of wood, a log or a rock. If you kick the rock, we say there's no experiencer in that rock. I mean, there could be some other being in there, like a bug or something, but the rock itself is not sentient. It doesn't have mind. So if you break the rock into a bunch of little pieces, you don't kill anything. Okay? Because there was no mind in there that you separated from its body. Okay? So that's the mind. That's the mind. So people, it's important to know that this mind, so things are either permanent, meaning unchanging, or impermanent. They're changing. It can't be both, but they have to be one or the other. So your hand, my hand, is that a permanent phenomena or impermanent? I'm going to say impermanent. Right? Yeah. Because it's changing moment to moment, isn't it? The definition of impermanent is, well, usually the definition is that which is produced. But to make it more simple, impermanent is that which changes instant to instant. Okay? So is the moon permanent or impermanent? How many say permanent? You guys are good. Okay. How many say impermanent? Right, because the atom, it's moving, changing instant to instant, right? Typically people think of it as, when we see it, it looks permanent. We don't see any changing happening, but that's just because of our eye perception can't see it. Doesn't mean it's not there, of course. And we know from science that it's made up of atoms and molecules and it's changing, even though it doesn't look like it's changing. Okay. Is the mind permanent or impermanent? How many say permanent? Well, you guys are okay. One. Anyone else? How many say impermanent? Okay, Manuel. Pardon. So the thing is, no, I'm glad you said it. So the mind does seem permanent, doesn't it? But when you think about it, you woke up this morning, and did you have your coffee?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so are you still having your coffee?
No.
So the guy, did you enjoy your coffee?
Yep, yes.
Are you still enjoying your coffee?
No.
No. So, and then that Manuel this morning, is he exactly the same Manuel that I'm talking to right now?
No.
No. So that's a good way to look at it. So the mind is impermanent, right? It's interesting, isn't it? So it also is moving moment to moment, instant to instant. It's very important quality of it. There are a few permanent things in the universe, in the world. There are a few. One of them is space. Okay, space is considered a permanent phenomenon. Now, when we talk about space, I'm not talking about the air in the space. I'm not talking about it's the space between the molecules. That's permanent. Okay, this cup inside that space is permanent. It's not changing moment to moment. Now, when I break the cup, you say, well, didn't the space change, right? But no, the space didn't change, but the cup did, because the cup is made up of atoms. It's impermanent. This is important. This is important, not just, I mean, it's fun, but it's also important, because if the mind were permanent, we could never change it. So liberation wouldn't be possible. Enlightenment wouldn't be possible. Relaxation wouldn't be possible. Reducing the stress in the mind would not be possible, because it would be permanent. It couldn't change. And things are either impermanent or permanent. They can't be both. We don't have to go into that. That's just, that's just science and philosophy. So, within the mind, as we know, within the Buddhist construct, the mind has different functions. And functions would be, so those functions are based upon the factors, mental factors, right? We have anger. Sometimes we get angry. When Manuel got up this morning and has coffee, he was excited and he was, what do you call it? Satisfied. Okay, so those are the kind. Then we get jealous. We have insecurity, lack of confidence, jealousy, courage. All kinds of things come up during the day, don't they? These are all the factors of the mind. Okay, so of course the mind is not, has a lot of functions. Okay, and these mental factors, some of them are afflictions because they disturb the mind, and some of them are not afflictions. Some are neutral and some are positive. Neutral one would be just observing, just the mind's capacity to just observe, see something. That's neutral, right? To see, just looking at the colors, it's just neutral. Then some things are not neutral. So whenever we perceive something, part of that perception is a feeling. And this feeling is a very subtle feeling, not like, not the usual way we use the word feeling, but this is where we'll have one of three feelings. We'll either feel a sense of pleasure or pleasantness, or we'll feel a little bit of sense of discomfort, and we'll feel a sense of neutrality. It's still a feeling. It's just not disturbing or moving. So when we have our coffee in the morning or tea, there's generally a sense, the feeling, the sensation is some sort of pleasant feeling initially. And then we go, oh, what a great cup of tea. And our mind starts moving, right? And if you use sugar or something in it and you don't put enough in, then the mind goes, it has a discomfort, it experiences a feeling of discomfort, right? You take that first sip and you forgot to put your honey in or whatever, and it's a little bitter. And for you, some people don't want sweet. So for that person, it's not a negative sensation. It's not unpleasant. For me, I like the sweet, so it's bitter. And then you do that minute, very fast, having very, very fast sensation of no, experience. There's no sweetener in it. And due to my habits, my habit, I like the sweetener. And I say, that's good. And Manuel doesn't like sweetener. So if I put sugar in his, he says that's bad. Okay? Because for him, that's just the way his mind's habituated. So that thing that's coming up is what we need to become familiar with. This is meditation. Okay. How do we know this? We only know it by studying the mind. So when we study the mind, we do it through familiarity. We watch it. That's meditation in the Buddhist context. When you train as a sniper in the military, I'm saying sort of loosely, but I think it's some truth. They develop a very heightened sense of concentration, don't they? And mindfulness. Okay, so, but that's not meditation in our book. You know, within the mindfulness movement, I think they would say, yeah, that's mindfulness. And if you ask people who are involved in the mindfulness thing or in some other forms of meditation, well, what's the difference? And they say, well, no, it's okay. He's developing his focus, or she, whoever the sniper is. But you see, in the Buddhist context, that doesn't work. Okay, so it's not just, so typically, now, don't you think that these days, when you ask people say they meditate, what do they mean? What do people mean? Anyone want to venture to say? Yeah. No one wants to say? Paula. Yeah. Okay. Barbara.
Yeah. I think they want to quiet their mind. They want to get rid of their thoughts.
Uh-huh.
And just kind of quiet their mind out is how I see people referencing meditation.
Right. I think that's pretty accurate, right? There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But it won't lead to any kind of permanent solution. So right now, that's why we're looking at that meditation or gom or familiarity in the Buddhist context has a purpose. And the purpose is to clear the mind completely, to transform it permanently, eternally. How about that? So you don't fall back, we don't fall back into confusion, and we don't fall back into pain, and we don't fall back into disappointment, and we don't fall back into being hurt. And all of these are conquerable. All of these can be transformed and treated. Okay. Now, I'll jump ahead a little bit. There's so much we can talk. I'm still on the first page of my notes, on my outline, but we're covering everything. I wanted to give you something. Why don't we do just a short breathing meditation, and then we'll circle back to where we're at. And I know it's jumping a little bit, but I feel like I don't want to be so linear. When we do, let me jump ahead. Before we do the breathing, I should cover that. Hang on a second. Yeah. So in traditional Buddhist meditation practice, does anyone? Well, I'm going to assume that people have a meditation practice, but let me just cover the basics as well. So when we develop a meditation practice, it's very good to have a special space for it. Sometimes I do my practices on my bed, but like Lama Yeshe said, traditionally it's better to have a dedicated space, corner of your room, and where you have a cushion or a chair. That's not a big deal. If you're more comfortable in a chair, you can definitely do it in a chair. And I remember Lama Yeshe saying, your meditation cushion should look like your bed. He said, everybody loves climbing into bed. Right? It's like they look forward to it. They look at it and they go, oh, I just want to lie down for a minute. So he said, a lot of people have these too strict of a meditation cushion or seat. It's like, He says that, you know, a lot of people that look at their cushion and it looks like nails. And then they think the next day, I don't want to go sit there, you know, sitting on a bunch of nails. So it has to be inviting as best it can be. It should be inviting, not something that you have aversion to. The other thing I'd like to say is don't meditate. Don't do your session don't do it all the way to the end. What I mean by that is you should stop before you want to stop. Does that make sense? The reason for that is that, again, if you push yourself too much and then it gets tiring and then it becomes like work. And that's not the idea. It is work, but it's more like work that we should enjoy most of the time, not all the time. It's going to be hard sometimes, but worthwhile. So it's very important not to push. And so I often tell people, you know, stop 5 minutes before you want to stop. That'll make you interested to come back next time. At least it doesn't make aversion to it. So then the typical meditation posture has 7 points to it. And, you know, I just want to give this to you because I feel I should, you know, share this traditional stuff. So if you're going to sit on cross-legged, then the first thing to talk about is your legs, which if you can do the lotus position, you know, with the lotus with both feet on your thighs, that's great. Most of us can't do that maybe we can do it for a few minutes. So it's not essential that you do that. But if you can't, then maybe your right foot on your left thigh, or just sit cross-legged. The reason for what happens in terms of developing our focus and concentration is the body becomes more and more supple. It's an amazing thing that happens when people say, oh, I'm so stiff, I can't sit, you know, I can't sit. You know, the remedy to that, well, the long-term remedy is have a relaxed mind. The more your mind is relaxed and focused, it's amazing. People who know, you know, you probably know this through meditation, all of a sudden you forget about your body because you're so focused on whatever your meditation topic is, maybe the breath or whatever it is. All of a sudden you realize you've been sitting there for 10, 15 minutes and your knees didn't hurt. Has anyone had that experience? Whereas if you're stressed and you try and sit, your knees hurt right away. You know what I mean? Or your back. So it shows it's connected with the mind. Okay. So the way to approach the stiffness and the difficulty of the body is, of course, stretching is very good, but you have to go back and stretch again. So ultimately, the cure is to have your meditation practice developed to a certain level where you can sit. And when you're completely focused, then the winds in your body become more settled, and you won't get painful knees and things like that. At least while you're focused. So the first of the 7 points is about this, the legs, and you can sit in a chair. Okay, too. And if you want to sit in a chair with your feet on the floor, then you should sit with both feet on the floor. You know, not with one leg over the other. You can, but generally they say keep your feet on the floor. And then the second, the 7 points they talk about is the arms. That's right, the arms. So the arms, you know, they should not be tight against your side, but maybe an inch or two, because they say that flowing of the air helps to keep your energies moving and keep you awake. Okay, or less sluggish. So, and then the hands, you know, part of the arms of the hands. Right hand on top of the left hand, usually. You can do left hand on top of right. There's some practices that encourage the left hand on top. There's different reasons why, but generally, as they talk in the beginning, right hand on top of it and your thumbs touching. And not stiff, just like there's a connection. There's a circular connection with the energies moving through your body. And then you just place them on your lap and just be relaxed about it. You know, just stay comfortable. The reason this posture is designed is so that you get into the posture and then you don't have to worry about your body anymore. Then you can do the task at hand, which is meditating with the mind itself. Okay. So at first it can feel stiff and that sort of, that's okay. Get comfortable. If it's not easy, just be if you're in a comfortable chair, you like that. Then the third point is your back. This is probably the most important one. you might make sure that your spine is straight, not rigid. So sometimes they talk about like there's a stack of coins. Your vertebrae are like a stack of coins from the crown of your head down to your bottom and your tailbone. It's all in line, not rigid, just really comfortable but straight, alert. Okay. So your crown is in line with your tailbone. Okay. And if you're in a chair, if your chair is not leaning back too much, it's better. If you can keep a little bit upright. You have to find what works for you too. If you find you go into a meditative state really easily in your chair, then it doesn't matter. All this doesn't matter. Also, you can lie down and meditate. You can lie on your back. The problem there is tend to fall asleep, but it's definitely acceptable to lie just to meditate that way. Eventually, everything becomes meditation, right? Even while you're walking and you're eating and whatever. But this is just the training, right? This is when you're in training, or we're in training. So straight but relaxed, and then the energy flows more evenly when the back is straight. Okay, we want those energies to flow, and it's also we won't get as sluggish. The eyes, I've always had the habit of having my eyes closed. I know they always talk about leaving them maybe slightly open because the light helps you not to fall asleep. So probably ideally they're just cracked a little bit open. If you have them all the way closed, just make sure not too tight. And your eyes are focusing downward, not upward. Okay. And your head, this is another one of the points, is your head is slightly bowed. Sometimes you see on TV, people going like that, I don't know what they're meditating like this. Or maybe you see people meditating like this. Not good. Okay, the reason that's not so helpful is it creates more of a daydreaming mind. Okay, more daydream, more distracted. So you want just slightly bent. You don't want too bent because then you'll fall asleep too. Just a little bent. So everything, just a little bowed. Like that. And then, so your jaw should be relaxed. It's another one of the 7 points. Jaw is relaxed. And your tongue is, your mouth, your lips are closed, unless you can't breathe. So mouth is closed, breathing through your nose. Teeth are slightly apart. You don't clench your teeth. It's very relaxed. Everything's relaxed. And then finally, your tongue should be placed against the tip of your tongue against your palate, right behind your front teeth. But again, not rigid. Just that's because it helps prevent drooling, saliva. Okay. Any questions about that? You all knew that. Okay. So let's just get into posture. This particular meditation is our first one. I'll probably talk a little bit, try not to talk too much. We'll do it for about 12 minutes. And all I want you to do, so I want you to get in your position, check your body, do a quick scan, see if there's any tension anywhere, your shoulders, your face, your jaw, your legs, your abdomen. And just kind of breathe into it and just let it relax. Just do a body scan. And when you put your attention to the tension, it'll just dissipate. Be really soft with yourself. And I want you to connect with your breath. If you're able to breathe through your nose. If you can't, then you have to breathe through your mouth. That's fine. So you are observing the breath, you're not controlling it. If your breath is shallow, then just leave it shallow. If it's rapid, just in other words, you have to just let it do what it does. You're just the observer. And you can focus on the breath in one of two places. Typically at the nostrils, the sensation of the air going in and out. This is a very useful technique that if you're very, very distracted and agitated, then bring your energy down to your abdomen and watch the breath there of the rising and falling of your abdomen, or the in and out. But if you're pretty okay, then bring it to the nostrils. And your only job is to observe it. Well, you have two jobs. Observe and catch your mind when it gets distracted, to bring it back. And so what I'd like you to do is, as the observer, when you're on the exhale of each breath, you count 1, 2, 3, on each exhale up to 10. Then I'd like you to reverse and go from 10 to 1. Then again, 1 to 10, 10 to 1. So we'll do that. I'm going to leave you alone. I might interrupt at one point just to help you remember. So that's the job. So this meditation is not just meditating on the breath, focusing on the breath. It's also to notice the mind wandering and bringing it back. It's very, very important you understand it's two things. Okay? So I'll leave you alone now and see you in a little while, about 10 minutes. For the next 2 minutes or so, keep your mind, focus on the breath. Don't squeeze, just very loosely, not too tight, not too loose. With a sense of satisfaction, just so if mind stays focused on the breath in the background. And I want to ask you a question to investigate. So you focus on the breath at the same time. I just want you to pay attention to the mind's experiences right now. See the mind experiencing, whether it's a sound of a bird, or a thought, or a sensation, doesn't matter. All you're doing is observing the mind experiencing, okay? Become familiar with the mind that is as an experiencer. Your mind's wandering, just come back. Part of the wandering is experience too. So experience wandering. You're just observing the mind experiencing. Okay, now just relax. Bring yourself back here, grounded. You can feel your touching the cushion or your chair, your feet on the ground. Just get back in your body. Feel your body very concrete, solid. Not very concrete, but it's here. Okay. Okay, any questions? Any comments? Any confusions? No? Okay. Yes, Barbara.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing happens when I will go to deliberately focus on my thoughts. It's like I don't have thoughts. And then my thought is, well, why am I not having any thoughts? Where am I? So then what I will do is I will switch over to focusing on my breath, and then the thoughts come.
Interesting, isn't it? It's kind of like there's rats in your basement, and then you turn on the light and they all scurry off into the corners and behind the boxes. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I wonder why do you think that happens? What's happening? Maybe a better way to put it. What do you think is happening?
I guess what's happening is I'm really trying to focus on thoughts. And then that becomes my focus, or that becomes my thought,
And
as
then they-
opposed to just
Yeah.
clearing and just letting them come in.
right.
But again, when I focus then on my breathing, then they come in.
Right. I don't know exactly. I have a feeling for myself what's happening. So when I focus on my breath and I can have that experience you're talking about, it's not that the thoughts are coming. The thoughts are there already. And I think that by focusing on the breath, almost like it clears the space for you to recognize that the thoughts are there in the background. When we focus on the thoughts themselves, they do seem to disappear. In fact, it's also one of the techniques, we're going to talk about, we'll use. Let me digress for just a second. The meditation is the therapy. It is the therapy that works. Now, if I'm feeling depressed, how is meditation the therapy for depression? If I'm feeling anxious, how is meditation the therapy for anxiety? If I'm feeling scared, how is meditation? So the interventions for each of those, the meditations for each of those at our level is different. Eventually the interventions are all the same, which means you develop a skillfulness that you can use the utility of your mind. It becomes so malleable, under your control, that you can use just one or two methods and get rid of these afflictions like quickly. That's down the road, right? So there's a lot of so meditation, this thing we're doing, we have to have the strength. Meditation means strengthening the mind, really, is what we're doing, getting it in shape. It's exactly what we're doing. So once we get in shape in the gym, then some people want to go rock climbing, some people want to go bicycling, some people want to go surfing, some people want to go for longer walks, some people want to run a marathon. It depends on what's going on, the personality, right? So this part about the breath is one of the interventions because it helps distractedness, right? So when you have a distracted mind, then the intervention, the meditation is focus on the breath. But when you have a scattered mind, also there's other interventions one can do. So the point is that now going back to your question about the thoughts, when one of the interventions is when you have, let's say you have anxiety, you're afraid of giving a talk tomorrow in front of your colleagues or something, or whatever, in class. So one of the practices is to focus, with this focus that we have, on the anxiety itself. Does that make sense? So, and what happens is, and you begin to look at it and you begin to analyze it, it disappears. It might not in the beginning, you might get more anxious, because you're focusing. But actually, when you focus on it in the right way, which is some of these techniques we're talking about, like for example, with anxiety, we have 84,000 just different methods, meditation methods, because of 84,000 different afflictions. So, so there's not one method. There is one method that gets rid of all of them, which is the meditation on reality or emptiness. Okay, but if we don't have that, if we haven't developed that very well, then we use all these other 84,000 methodologies. And one of them is to analyze the anxiety itself. So going back to your question about the thought, what's really a very fascinating practice for you to do is take a little piece of your mind, very sneaky, hide out in the corners so that the thoughts don't know that you're watching, and watch what I think is really, really, really super helpful. You can do a lot of different things, but at this stage is just watch the thoughts arise and fall away. See if you can watch them arise. Now, what is thought though? So when you're meditating and you say, I'm not thinking, there's no thinking, there is experience, right? you might hear the sound of a bird. So that sound of a bird is not that different from a thought, because when you really analyze when you really see the reality of the sound of the bird, it's a mental experience, but we're caught up in external. We think it's right, it's here or something, or out there. But when we get to the point of becoming more and more familiar with the mind, then the sound of the bird is a mental experience, just like a thought. It's not that different. Okay? So the thought is a thing, like you can make yourself think. Just prompt yourself saying, okay, I'm not thinking anything. Okay, I'm going to make myself think about what I'm going to do tomorrow. And you'll start thinking. But you'll probably get lost in it. So the trick is do the thinking and have that little spy. That's mindfulness. That's the true meaning of mindfulness, by the way, or part of it. Try that. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Okay. Anybody else? Any comments? So part of the thing about the mind that we're talking about, which I should emphasize, is the mind has this unlimited potential. And then we didn't talk about that tonight, okay? And that's what makes it exciting. So just to give a little intensity to the topic. So it's not so what happens with the mind is really fascinating, is that the power of focus is such that the more the mind develops focus, other things start happening that we don't normally have. Those other things don't happen because we are distracted. And we're distracted in many ways. Distracted merely, we might be distracted by, thoughts going all over the place all the time, and I want to watch TV. Oh, maybe before I watch TV, maybe I should get a snack, and before I get my snack, maybe I should heat it up, and heat it up. Oh, but should I use the microwave or the oven? Well, the oven's slower, but the microwave's, microwaves, and maybe that's right. That's distraction. And some of us are more like that than others, and we're kind of speedy and kind of jumping all over the place. That has to be tamed, but that can be transformed also. But the other kind of distraction is that, as we study the mind, there are levels of distraction. So generally speaking, the distraction that's most crippling is we're distracted by what we think is reality. We first have to work at these gross layers, but ultimately, when we hear, when we taste, when we see, when we smell, when we feel in our body, and what we think is all incorrect. We think it's all right, but it's not right. We don't see things correctly. When I say see, I mean see, think, hear, touch, taste, or think. All the five senses, and then the mental sense. When we're dreaming at night, that's just our mental sense and sense consciousness operating. And we're in a dream, we don't see the dream correctly either. So because we don't see things correctly, we're distracted by them. Okay? So if you're watching a beautiful sunset, we don't see the sunset as it really is. If we see it as it really is, we don't get distracted. We don't get all giddy about it or get disappointed when it gets dark. All those things. See, Buddhist psychology is a pretty rough approach because it's saying, by the way, all the things you enjoy are messed up also. There is some things more messed up than other things, right? But running someone off the road because you're pissed off at them is not seeing things correctly, like having, lying down with your child and reading him or her a book to sleep. Those are not the same quality, but it's the same level of deception. If that makes sense. It's the same deception. Levels change, intensity changes. So that's what karma is, by the way. The karma is just by how fooled we are and how much mental emotion we have behind it determines the intensity of the karmic imprint or the imprints. Okay, so it's not, for example, let me take a gross example. When walking along the street and we step on an ant, that is killing. When we walk along the street and we shoot somebody because we're, they don't believe in our political view, that's killing. So both are killing, right? But they're not equal. Okay, they're not equal karma. They're not equal imprints, are they? One's done with a lot of intensity and the other one is, so a lot of things that make a difference there. How did I get on that track? So distraction is at very, very, very multiple levels. That was my point. We first have to take care of the gross distraction of just being able to sit for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, or just being able to listen to our friend, who's having a hard time. Do you notice that some people are good listeners? What makes a good listener? Kim?
The ability to remain silent and not to judge.
And I'm guessing that has a certain level of being able to not be distracted, not being distracted by your judgmental mind, not being distracted by their complaining, because you don't say, oh, they're, not being distracted by their sadness, not being distracted, right? It's fascinating, isn't it? When you think about it, if we have focus, with focus, the quality of our mind, the qualities in the mind can become awakened. So if, like what Kim says, if you're sitting there and you're focused, you're not obsessed with your focus, you're focused on their well-being, they'll feel that, right? People feel that, don't they? And they said, oh, I had a really, what Kim just listened to me, she was really helpful. You hear that? They do these studies on therapists, and what are the qualities of good therapists? And they look at the therapist's training, their education, their model that they work from, their gender, their environment, their advice. They look at all these things. Like, I think there are 8 different variables. So do you know what variable captures the number one spot 85% of the time? What do you think it is?
The ability to listen.
It is the ability to listen. It's rapport, connection. Now, connection happens through listening, right? But it's really about connection. So if a person feels heard, feels understood, feels connection, feels care. So, sometimes you go to somebody and they're listening as an exercise, I better listen to them, you don't feel it, right? It's contrived, so it's care. That's what people feel is the most helpful thing. They don't remember what the person said. They remember the vibration, the connection between the two of you. That's why most people first go to family members and friends for their problems. Kim, you were going to say something?
No,
okay.
no.
Okay. Anything else? Because I must be getting tired. Anybody tired?
No, but I have a question, Karuna.
Okay.
You said something about when you get really good focus, then
Yes.
all kinds of things start to happen.
Correct.
What are all those kinds of things?
Well, as we dig deeper, over the next few weeks, so this is a very, well, in true Buddhist, okay, so why we're meditating is one of three reasons as a Buddhist. It's all of them is to get a better control over the mind. Why? In order to generate a higher rebirth and better quality of mind. That's the lowest motivation. And then the second low, or the middle one, is to attain liberation. Liberation means complete freedom, complete control over over everything. Well, the only way I can have control is when I control my mind, and the only way I control my mind is it's really liberated from the afflictions, all the disturbing emotions. And then the third one, which is in the Mahayana tradition, is full enlightenment. I mean, we don't have to get too philosophical about it, but they're just full enlightenment means I'm going to attain liberation because I really want to help others attain liberation. I can't do it if I don't have that, if I'm all messed up. Okay, so the only way to do that is to tame the mind. And the only way to tame the mind is through mental mind training, right? Mind training, which is mostly meditation, but not only meditation. So mind training. So when you develop formally, we're developing mind training or meditation, we need to develop what's called single pointed concentration. So meditation in this context is not only, but 50% of it or more is to develop single pointed concentration. When you develop single pointed concentration or calm abiding, often, or samadhi, as they say in Sanskrit, you develop clairvoyances, for example, and you develop, the mind becomes so focused that you don't, you're able to sit without moving on a single topic for 4 hours or more, for as long as you want. You don't need sleep anymore for the most part, and you develop a physical and mental pliancy or bliss. It's not enlightenment, but it is a qualities of mind. Your mind becomes so satisfied and so powerful and so controlled, you can do anything with it. And you see that's even in the Hindu tradition, they develop these samadhis also. Maybe other traditions as well. In the Buddhist tradition, these are byproducts. We're not trying to develop single pointed concentration so that we can become clairvoyant. But one of the byproducts is clairvoyance. Another byproduct is you're able to see past and future lives, your own and others, things like that. But in the Buddhist tradition, when we develop this single point of consciousness, what we're really trying to do is you then can subduing these afflictions like anger and jealousy and fear and insecurity happens very quickly. Then very, very powerful, very quickly. Your mind doesn't even go there anymore. Whether you purify them completely or not is a different story. But you don't go. Your mind doesn't get distracted into those. Now the other part is we have within us one of our mental factors is compassion. Another one is love. These are not very active in us. So if you have the right set of teacher, the right teacher, right teachings, you take your single pointed concentration and you apply it to developing your compassion and your love and your equanimity and your nonviolence, non-hatred, and you just take off. And so now you become a loving, dominated by love, as opposed to what we're dominated when we really analyze and watch our minds. We're dominated by mostly anger and attachment. And anger is very subtle. I mean, irritation is anger. And we just don't have any control. So with single point of concentration, we develop this unbelievable control. If just to underscore that control alone is not enough, because you have to use the control in the right way. And if other traditions, other religions say this is the right way, and Buddhism says this is the right way, and we have to analyze that and think about it and then decide for ourselves which is right. But that's another topic. Okay, is that okay? Yeah. Okay, thanks. Paula, host.
Thank you so much, Karuna. Thank you. That
Yep.
was just marvelous. Would you like to finish with the dedication prayers?
Yes.
Shall I bring them up?
You have them there?
Yes, I do.
Okay, why don't we pop them up and I'll do them in English.
Okay.
I'll try not
you.
to talk too much. Okay. So these are our traditional prayers that we do. So I'll recite them in English and give just a small commentary. Okay, so due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. So this is the Mayana dedication. If you can just hold it there for a minute, Paula. Yeah. Thank you. This is the Mayana dedication. There's many Buddhist traditions. This is the Buddhist tradition of the Mayana. Due to the merits of these virtues, the merits of these virtues means all this 2 hours of really focusing on this topic, which is a very virtuous topic. It's going to help us and help others. And then I don't just want to become famous for this. I don't just want to even just have single point of concentration. I don't even want to, just bliss out. That's what a lot of traditions do with this stuff. Well, in my case, we want to attain the state of enlightenment. That's what it means, Guru Buddha, so that we can lead all living beings without exception. That means even the cockroaches, into that enlightened state. Okay. Okay. Now we can go to the next one. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. So if we develop single pointed concentration, we can explode. This is one of the mental factors. This bodhicitta is part of the mind. In us now, it's dormant for most of us. Okay. Or maybe it's not dormant, but it's very, very small. So the single point of concentration gets it to expand quickly, and so that bodhicitta is the awakening mind. May the jewel of the awakening mind, which is inside us right now, if it hasn't been activated, may it be activated and increase. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Okay, was there another one? That's it, right?
That's it, unless you want the long life prayers. That's it.
Yeah. Are people here students of Lama Zopa? And yeah. So this Lama Zopa, this is a short one, right?
I'm sorry. That's the one I've got.
Good. Go back up to Lama Zopa. Thank you. It's good. I mean, the short one's good. So this is just to create a stronger connection with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's actually someone who's attained all the things I've been talking about tonight, I believe. And so it's important to have examples around us and not just, scholars or that sort of thing. So this makes a strong connection, asking him to live a long time. He actually has control over his life and death. So, it's more like if we don't have the wish to learn, then he doesn't stay, because his connection, he only stays because they're students. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Savior, myself, and others, your disciples, please, please live long. And then His Holiness. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. So we're dedicating our merits to all these things these prayers that we talked about tonight. Okay? Okay, I think that's good. Thank you all very, very much for hanging in there. And I hope to see you next week, because I don't want to talk to myself. And bring your friends if they want to come. Okay, and Paola, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Okay,
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
okay, thank you.
Night.
Thank you.